Welcome to the No BS Spiritual Book Club's live streaming interview series, where leading new thought teachers, speakers, and authors share the intimate stories behind the 10 best spiritual books that inspired them the most on their spiritual journey. From well-known classics to hidden gems you might never have heard of, the No BS Spiritual Book Club saves you time and money by sharing reliable recommendations from those who've walked the path before you. The No BS Spiritual Book Club, the only no BS guide to the best spiritual books to inspire your own journey of self-discovery. Here's your host, founder of the No BS Spiritual Book Club, Sandie Sedgbeer.
Hello and welcome. Joining me today to share the 10 best spiritual books that inspired him the most on his life journey is world-renowned Hungarian philosopher of systems science and futures studies and 2 times Nobel Peace Prize nominee Ervin Laszlo. The founder and president of the international think tank, the Club of Budapest, and the prestigious Laszlo Institute of New Paradigm Research, Ervin Laszlo is the founder of the worldwide Upshift movement, whose necessity is outlined in his latest book, The Upshift, The Path to Healing and Evolution on Planet Earth, which offers a detailed guide to becoming the change we all want and need to see in the world. Ervin Laszlo, welcome.
Sandie, it's a great pleasure to be with you again.
Likewise, Ervin. Now, you're the author, co-author, or editor of 106 different books available in 25 languages. So clearly, books have played a very big role in your life.
I don't know how that came about. I didn't plan to write. Actually, I didn't plan to write any book. I never wrote on contract or on other people's requests. I just write up my ideas, and I think there is something there. Then and other people confirm it. Then I try to expand it enough to make a book, and there it is. Then something is being born, but I just let it happen. I didn't plan it. So I'm not a conscious father of 106 books. Somehow I have 106 offsprings that the universe helped me to beget.
Oh, that's a wonderful way, actually, to have, so many people, they have a desire to write a book and they're attached to the outcome of the book. And yours just, it's almost as if the desire drives, the production.
The opposite holds also. If I sit down and something just doesn't go, it happened to me earlier today about a message that I was going to write, email message. It just wouldn't go through, and I kept making mistakes. And then I asked myself, my goodness, do I really need that? And the answer was, no, I don't. Thank goodness I didn't send it, So I'm also not only sometimes impelled to write and suggested how to write, but I'm also being prevented from writing. I trust that. I trust that inner guide.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about the 10 books that you've said inspired you the most on your life journey. And I'm assuming that these are in no particular order. They're not chronological. So the first one is considered one of the major philosophical texts of the 20th century, Process and Reality by Arthur North Whitehead, published in 1979.
Indeed, it's a Bible. And what it makes it outstanding is that it's a logical, coherent system. Talk about a book of everything. This is a theory of everything. This is a theory of everything. Not in detail, not the surface reality, but the deep reality. It's really how things could be, are likely to be beneath the surface when you all put it together. Alfred North Whitehead was a Platonist. At the time when I picked up this book, if somebody would have asked me, am I a Platonist? I said, no, I'm more likely to be an Aristotelian. I really believed in observation and in trying to theorize on the basis of what we see with our eyes and hear with our ears. Alfred North Whitehead changed that, because that's only the surface. That's only one dimension. The deep dimension beyond that is that which generates the surface phenomena. And that is something which is not casual. This is not just happens to be. It cannot be observed, but it can be known. How it can be known if it can't be observed? It can be known by intuition. It's been known by our feeling that this is likely to be the case it is. There is the simplest, most potent explanation. I believe in this, in the saying, for example, of Einstein that, he said about science, we seek the simplest possible scheme of thought that can account for the facts, for the observed facts. That's what his quote is, actually. I believe in that. And the simplest possible scheme of thought that would account for the observed facts, for me, when I picked this up in the 1970s, was Process and Reality by Whitehead.
So, do you know how it came into your life? Had you heard about it? Did you stumble across it?
I stumbled across another book by an Indian philosopher, a multiple reality, I think it's called. And I stumbled across it in an antiquariat in a bookstore in Switzerland. And I picked it up. It's very abstract. It's just considering, again, the kind of thing that Whitehead is doing. And he kept referring to Whitehead. So I took out the book and started reading it. I remember on a park bench in Lausanne, in Switzerland, where I lived at the time. And I went back to the bookstore and asked, do you have Whitehead's Process and Reality? They said, you don't, but we can order it and it'll be here tomorrow. So I went back tomorrow, and that's how I picked it up. And that for multiple reality, it became the one reality, the process in reality. Because the other big word that I want to emphasize here and in connection with practically all my readings and writings is process. Process is not observation, not description. It's something dynamic. It's something that becomes. And Whitehead's philosophy is that everything that exists becomes.
Yes.
It all becomes together. But one thing is the outcome of its relationship to all other things. And this is a fantastically powerful idea. Nothing is separate. And now, decades after Whitehead, in the quantum sciences, we see how true that is.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is co-created in a universal field. And how Bohm also, still after Whitehead, some couple of decades after Whitehead, in his work, emphasized the deep dimension, the implicate order. And that is also shows what there is in the surface dimension, in the explicate order, is how the implicate order interacts with itself and creates the phenomena. And we are part of that deep order, and our body, our senses are reflections of the outcome of that deep phenomena, of that deep process that is happening in the womb of the universe. Sounds abstract, but and the new sciences bear this out.
Yes.
But anyway, it's the intuition. It's I'm still convinced of that. It's the simplest possible scheme of thought that can account for the observed facts.
Yes. Yeah. Now, you've got a second book by Arthur North Whitehead, one that was published earlier in 1967 called Adventures of Ideas.
I love the idea that this is an adventure. Mm-hmm. It's not, we don't have to take it so deadly seriously. The Germans have an expression, tierische Ernst. That means being beastly serious. And the typical old-fashioned German mentality, the Prussian mentality, was to take everything seriously. That's the way it is, and that's the way you must do it. On the other hand, there's a playfulness to it. There is something in a modern spirit. There's something typically in a French spirit, for example, or in Italian and Mediterranean. I think also in the Hungarian. It's a play. It's an adventure. Here we are. Here we are part of this amazing adventure which we call life, living in the world. And that is to participate joyfully is a spirit of adventure. We never know what comes next, but we can always try to do the best we can with whatever comes.
Yeah, and remain curious.
We have that lightness of reality, which many writers have been talking about, and I try to keep that. I don't always succeed. People sometimes say, "Why don't you smile more often?" And I try. I think when I talk to you about these things, then I can smile, because I think this is close to my heart. Sometimes I fall into also this problem of taking things too much down to, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have the other things too. But try the best we can. I try to do that and try to make the most of what is given. We have an awful lot given, and the more I reflect on this, the more I'm grateful to be alive at this point. We have an amazing tools, opportunities at our disposal. Opportunities, what I say nowadays in my new US books, about to make evolution, our evolution conscious, to take our evolution into our own hands. That is a chance given to us by history, by human history, actually the history of life on Earth. We've got to the point where we have consciousness, we have choice, and we can use our consciousness to make the choice that we really wish to make.
Yes, and that's what the Upshift movement is all about. And we will discuss that after we've finished talking about your list, because it's a really, really important topic. Book number 3, General System Theory, Foundations, Development, Applications by Ludwig von Bertalanffy, published in 1969.
I had the good fortune to know Ludwig von Bertalanffy in person. I spent a semester at Yale in the early 1970s, and he came to visit there to give some guest lectures. We met. I have come across his book, General Systems Theory, even before that, and his writings on systems. And they attracted me tremendously, because I was searching for the simplest possible scheme, as you were saying. And von Bertalanffy provides that simplest possible scheme when it comes to the biology of life, when it comes to explaining how life can emerge from non-life. And that is the idea of a system. System is not just a mechanical system or an informational system. It's a living system, a dynamic system. And as we now know, and we know from Bertalanffy, and after that, shortly after his death, first chance to work with and meet and work with Ilya Prigogine, the Belgian Nobel Prize chemist, physical chemist. And he was showing that how everything working together to create life far from the inert and probable state of equilibrium. Not equilibrium, disequilibrium, more exactly said, non-equilibrium, a dynamic equilibrium, which is not a passive equilibrium where everything is already in place and nothing can move out of it. It's a dynamic equilibrium where every deviation from a norm is compensated, where a system can evolve, take on complexity and coherence. That's a tremendously attractive idea. And Bertalanffy's general system theory shows that. It's as long misunderstood, because people were taking general systems theory as the general theory of systems. It's the general theory of living systems, but not the idea of system itself. What is general is not the individual system. What is general is our understanding of the theory of how all living systems evolve. So it's a general theory of system. In German, you can't make that. Die allgemeine Systemlehre, he said, the general theory of system, and not a general system, not a theory of a general system. No such thing as a general system. Every system is individual. They're all connected, of course, but they're all individual systems. And so the idea of von Bertalanffy was very powerful for me. We became friends. I started to develop this in a philosophical implications of this, a little bit that I was mentioning just now, but I developed it in a book. And the Introduction to Systems Philosophy. That's one of my many books, as you mentioned. And to this is a unique book in the sense that the foreword to it, the introduction, was written by Ludwig van Bertalanffy.
Now, you mentioned Ilya Prigogine. I'm not sure how to pronounce that.
Yes, he says, everybody says Prigozhin. He says it's Prigozhin. Because he was Russian by origin.
Okay. So his book, Order Out of Chaos, is another one that's on your list. Man's New Dialogue with Nature. And he's an acclaimed philosopher. He's a Nobel laureate. And he wrote that book with the acclaimed philosopher Isabel Stengers.
Yes.
So tell us about this book. A real pioneering book, this one.
Absolutely. It gives a physical basis for something otherwise seemed to miraculous. How something can emerge, not from nothing, but from predecessors that it wasn't there. Evolution, really. He gave it a physical basis. He developed a system of reactions of molecules, which he called the Brusselator, Brussels, to honor his home city where he worked in Belgium. He called it the Brusselator. So the Brusselator shows, and it can be reproduced, how when you bring certain molecules in combination, something new emerges, something that wasn't there. And that system becomes more coherent and more complex. And it's an autopoietic system, self-creating system. And Prigozhin showed how this can happen in the laboratory. He can reproduce it in the laboratory. And he developed, on the basis of this assurance that you're talking about something real, he developed a whole theoretical structure, the evolution theory on the non-equilibrium system evolution, a very powerful idea, very much contrary to most the everyday views, and even the prevalent views in science, which is always going down to equilibrium. Even Freud was talking about, finding the equilibrium, finding where it can be at rest. Life is not at rest. When we are at rest, we are not dead. As long as we are living, we are always moving, striding. We're always keeping away from that dead and inert state, motivating ourselves. There's a static equilibrium, which is like a ball moving over a landscape, over an upshift, downshift landscape. If it moves out a little bit, gravity puts it back into the bottom of the throw. There's another kind of equilibrium which occurs on the peak of the wave. You think of the ball being on the tip of each wave, on the crest. If it moves down a little bit, there's a countervailing force moving it back up again. That's the dynamic equilibrium. Life is constantly staying on the tip of the wave. If we go down, we become sick, we lose energy, we lose power. The further down we go. So as long as we are healthy, we stay on top. We stay in non-equilibrium. That's the healthy state. It sounds negative, non-equilibrium, but it's not disequilibrium. It's non-equilibrium.
Yeah.
And it's the secret of energy. How energy can be maintained and used by a system. It's only by maintaining itself far from the gravitationally inert state. Use all the other powers of the universe. And now we can talk about it also if you like. I'm convinced that there is a force in the universe, which is not the known universal forces, which are called the force of evolution, an attractor, the multiple coherence attractor. So I think this is the case. Prigozhin and Bertalanffy, they make a connection. There's a continuum. And now this with quantum theory is the continuation of that continuum. The more we see, the more we understand how we can maintain ourselves in a healthy, active state by constantly balancing the trends toward what physics is called entropy, what in biology is called going down to the minimum energy state. We need to stay on top of it, and that is health, that is life.
Wow. Book number 5 is Nouvelle Alliance, The New Alliance, Metamorphosis of Science, also by Prigozhin and Isabel Stengers. And I could not find an English language copy of this anywhere. only French language?
I think they may have given it another title. I read it in French, so I don't really know. But it was published in English. Very largely what I just said is the philosophy of Prigozhin, spelled out by Isabel Stengers. So that's what it's the new alliance between spirituality and science. Now we shift from pure intuitive, important as that is, no doubt, intuitive reading of reality toward an understanding that is based on experience, on experiment, and doesn't stop at that, but allows the connection with spirituality. So that, to put it back in terms and those that we just talked about a little while ago, it doesn't stay on the surface explicate order. It goes down into the deep implicate order. So what there is not born at the surface. It's born in the depths. It's only manifested at the surface. So, and this is what a Nouvelle Alliance has been spelling out.
We're going to take a short break now, and when we'll come back, we'll be talking about the Sphinx and the Rainbow, Brain, Mind and Future Vision by David Loy. So we'll be back in a few moments. Stay tuned.
OMTimes TV.
Maya Angelou once said that there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and when I'm not hosting OMTimes Media's flagship radio show What Is Going On and the No BS Spiritual Book Club, I help people share their untold stories. Books are my life, my joy and my passion, and there is no greater reward than helping aspiring writers get their books out of their heads and into the hands of those who are waiting to read them. If you feel that you have a book in you but don't know where to begin, visit sedgbeer.com. Click on the Work With Me tab and find out how my experience helping others tell their stories might be just what you've been looking for. That's sedgbeer.com, sedgbeer.com.
Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. OMTimes Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, OMTimes offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an OMTimes magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on OMTimes TV and broadcasting it across the extensive OMTimes radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. OMTimes. Open yourself to the possibilities.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Welcome back. Ervin Laszlo, are you there? There you are, Ervin. Book number 6, The Sphinx and the Rainbow Brain, sounds really fascinating. It explores how the front brain may interact with the right and left brain in forecasting the future. Tell me more about that.
Well, this book actually pioneers the connection between our intuitive left brain and our observational pragmatic right brain. And this was new to me, this explanation that I sought between the implicate order and the explicate order. It actually has a basis in the brain, because our brain is capable of picking up more subtle signals. And how we can be open to signals that are not observable in themselves. How we can feel that. This David has been the pioneer in showing that. Interestingly enough, he would be delighted if he were alive. He said, unfortunately, a few years ago, not long ago, actually passed, when he founded the Heart Math Institute and the whole movement of the intuitive heart picking up signals that it transmits to the observational pragmatic brain, how this actually confirms and carries experimentally forward, experientially also forward, his ideas of the left brain and the right brain, and how the dominance of one can change your personality, can change your action compared with the dominance of the other. So we need both. We need cross-hemispheric dominance. We need to have both of these hemispheres work together. If we emphasize only one, we can deeply spiritual person, but we are highly able to survive on this planet, and we may be making grievous mistakes in our everyday life because we are not focused on it. If we only look at the right hemisphere, we see what there is, but we are blind to anything that's beyond that, how that came about, and what the implications of that are, and the wider implications. So David Lloyd shows how we can put these two elements together and become a more balanced person, become more the Sphinx, the knower, the mystical knower, and the rainbow, which is the intuitive self. So the richness of experience, the enormous richness, the abundance of colors and sounds and experiences that are there for us, if you only are willing to listen, to hear, and to look. So I remember picking up David Lloyd's book as another anecdote, but it's true, at the bookstore at the Metropolitan Museum in New York. As you know, the Met is a building on the edge of Central Park, on the Central Park side of Fifth Avenue, and it's a bookstore. And it was a beautiful day, and I wanted to walk around in the park. But as I was browsing the bookstore before going out in the park, I came across David's book, and it looked to me fascinating. I looked at the back cover, I looked at the introduction, and I took it along, and I lied down on the fruit, just on the lawn, just outside the Met. It was a nice day, and I opened it. I got up only when it became dark, and it was time to go dinner, because I was reading it practically page by, cover to cover. It's fascinating. It's not a long book, but it makes a lot of sense. It clarifies a lot of things. Yes. Including the aha experience, which he himself talks about, the experience of not something new, yes, something new to me, but something that I've known, something that I intuited, but didn't realize, didn't come across consciously. The aha, so that must be so. And that's just the kind of experience that David Lloyd's Sphinx and the Rainbow gave to me.
Mm. Book number 7, Gaia, A New Look at Life on Earth by James Lovelock, published in 1979. And since it was published, many of his predictions have come true.
Indeed, this is a pioneer book in making clear that the human species is not something added on to the biosphere, so added into the biospheres perhaps, but that humanity is part of a symphony of life, which is a system of life, which is the Gaia, named after that the author picked up as the name of the Greek goddess for nature, for the earth. So this understanding of the system of life as being more than a collection of species and environments, of individuals, of tribes, of clans, of groups, and cells and of body-making individuals, that is all together makes a coherent system from the smallest atom in your body to the most embracing climate shift of the planet. It all makes a system. All together is a system. And what we are now beginning to realize that it is this system that we have subverted, that we need to desperately to realign ourselves with the Gaia, the goddess, not as a conscious separate being, but as the consciousness of the biosphere with all the living elements and all the environments, the ecologies of this living system, which are themselves living elements. How all this put together create a maintaining, self-evolving, embracing system of which we are an organic part, whether we like it or not. But if we don't like it, or if we don't realize it, we act at our own cost. We pay for it, because health and wellness goes with going with the system. Going with the system is becoming one with nature, terrestrial nature, living nature on the planet. That's the Gaia system. And that is a point of reference today. Whenever we want to ask what is healthy, what is good may be good for a part, but not necessarily. Maybe what the part does subverts the other part of the whole. But what is good for the whole is necessarily good for all the parts, because we're all part of that. You're all more than just mechanical parts. You're all reflections. You're all projections of that whole. We can talk about that because actually this is like almost like a wave phenomenon, a giant wave of which we are ripples ourselves. And the Gaia idea says that this giant wave system of which we are a part is a conscious system. It has its own consciousness. A powerful idea, and one well merits being taken seriously.
Yes, indeed. Book number 8, Psychology of the Future, by one of the founders of transpersonal psychology, Stanislav Grof. This one was published in 2000.
A psychology of the future is already the psychology of the present for the author. He was a great friend, and he is still a great friend. And we are in touch as much as we can. But the idea of our psychology being not just the behaviorism, which was prevalent in his time. It's not just acting on stimulus response kind, mechanically. The deep psychology of our body, of our mind, is the psyche, which goes deep down, which goes beyond the range of the senses. Those explorations, the psychic, the psychonauts, I think the author calls them, like astronauts, he calls the investigators of this deep dimension, the psychonaut. So I've been influenced by this, by recognizing that psychology has to be reformed. It is being reformed already as we speak now, but not sufficiently, perhaps not in all levels. But some 15, 20 years ago, the dominant psychology was Skinnerian behaviorism. It is the idea that everything can be explained in reference either to the survival imperative, survival impetus of the whole organism, or to the sexual impetus, which is part of that, of course, needed for our survival, the reproductive impetus. So moving toward that direction is what he contests, and he says we're not moving toward plain more and more understanding of how equilibrium can be reestablished, how the psyche can move to satisfaction. But as we talked before, the real impetus is to move toward a dynamic, coherent worldview which is there in the psyche, in the depths of the psyche, to the new psychology, the psychoanalytic trend beyond Freud. This is what's represented in this book, going beyond Freud, more or less along the line of Jung, for example. He was very close to this, and even Adler. We are not just sexual satisfaction machines. We are searchers and seekers of a deeper understanding, of a deeper being, which is the evolutionary impetus to my mind, which is maintained here as the very practical psychology, something that one can cure with, one can work with. It's not just fancy words put together. It's something that can be applied. That's the psychology of the depth psychology of today. Is the real psychology, not just of the future, but it's already, which is dawning now and becoming more and more powerful each year.
So book number 9 is The Nature of Physical Reality, a philosophy of modern physics by the German-American physicist and philosopher of science, Henry Margenau.
Margenau was a professor at Yale University in the physics department. And he has had the good fortune, I think it's a good fortune, but he would not contest it, to have been a pupil of what Alfred knows Whitehead. And Whitehead, in turn, was a disciple and co-worker of Einstein. So Margenau comes directly from this great tradition. What's so remarkable with Margenau, that he doesn't stop at the boundaries of mainstream physics. He dares to go beyond it. He dares to go what those mean for our understanding of physical reality as a whole, not just the reality of the physics system. I had again the fortune myself to meet Margenau while I was still a concert pianist, but already working at the Institute of East European Studies in Fribourg, at the University of Fribourg in Switzerland. And Margenau came to visit at the invitation of the director of the institute, which was a Dominican priest, but a very interesting personality and a logician, Joseph Bohensky. So Margenau came to visit, he gave a talk, and then we settled down and we talked and we became good friends. And he had a lot to do with my coming to Yale and actually changing my professional orientation from being a professional musician to becoming a professional academic. Because it was his work that first called attention to the chairman of the physics department at Yale to my work, who then read my books of the time and invited me to come to Yale, and which I did. And the rest is history, so to speak. But I appreciated in Margenau particularly this openness of a person who was a mathematical physicist, a concrete person looking for concrete answers to concrete questions, but this openness to realize that the answer that he seeks cannot be given within the classical framework, or must go beyond it. He dared to go beyond it. And more in his latest books, I think, or articles at any rate, show more and more this willingness, this courage to question, to ask, and to use the physics framework as an element in a larger picture, which is a picture of reality, physical reality being part of the reality, which is perhaps psychophysical, both psychic and physical.
Just 1 second, I just need to make sure we don't get any more interruptions by bells going off. Book number 10. This was a book that was started in 1912, not completed until 1924, was instantly recognized as a masterpiece and won its author the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1929. The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann. Tell us about this book.
It's a world in itself. Magic Mountain is a sanatorium in the Alps. This history of people who have come there, where the rest of the world disappears, as it were. So you are focused in on yourself and on the other people. on each other's histories, on each other's universe. It's a universe of its own.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how such a universe can exist within the larger universe. How I can shift off, how I can get off from the planet, as it were, from the physical, biological planet, and live in the magic mountain. Thomas Mann is a great writer. I admire all the writings of his writing that I could get hold of. Since I read German, I had a good fortune of being able to read them in the original. But the Magic Mountain is a magical book. And it influenced me by arresting me from avoiding that sense of being embedded and encapsulated in one framework of reality, showing that there are other realities, which for those who live them is just as real as any other reality, as the scientific reality. So it's a fascinating experience, getting off and getting onto another mountain, a magical mountain. To me, it was a personal experience, an aesthetic experience, actually. And those of you who are willing to take this will find it a very rewarding one.
You've met a few of the authors that we've discussed. Is there an author here that you would have loved to have met but never had the chance?
All of these authors, I would say, yes. I think I would, if I had a chance to be with them again. Some of them have contact with, but to work with and to learn from. I admire their thinking. I admire now their thinking. I come more and more to do so. And to be able to benefit from being in a face-to-face, heart-to-heart contact, it would be a very great experience for me. Going back, ultimately, this road leads back to Einstein, through Whitehead, through Margenau, through Northrop and other people that I've had the fortune to meet. I would like to have met all of them, beginning with Einstein. That's nothing new, I think, for more people. But I have the sense that what Einstein said, when he said that there are two ways to live your life, as if everything is a miracle or as if nothing is, then I would have lived like that, as if everything is a miracle.
Yes.
Not because we have to sit back stupefied by it, but because we are there to be astonished by the miracle of existence and to try to comprehend of it humbly, knowing that we can't do it all, knowing that we can approach it, however, more and more, can penetrate some of that mystery. Everything is a mystery, everything is magic, and we can now penetrate it bit by bit, and every step forward gives us great satisfaction. These books that we've been discussing have given me a little penetration into that mystery. I try to hold on to that, and I try to convey that penetration through these works to anybody who wants to go and follow in these steps. There are many ways to go forward. This is one of them. This was my way.
I know that you were a concert pianist. What were you like as a child? I mean, were you interested in the world? Were you an early reader?
I love to read always. Yes, I love to read. I love to play the piano. I love to go to concerts. But not unusually. I don't not in a healthy, focused way. I think I did what the French call the joie de vivre. I like life. I enjoyed life. I had this strange experience, strange for most people, at the age of 12, when the Nazi regime overran Hungary, the borders from the west, trying to fight off the Russian invasion coming from the east, and created an absolute terrorist regime with its restrictions, with its bombing, with its anti-Semitism, with its violence, for 1 year, just surviving. But then I came back, and the experience that I had on coming back was, I would almost say, almost worse the suffering from before. That was perhaps overstating it, but it was a marvelous experience as the city came back to life. as he managed to subdue the Nazi forces, which are still surrounding very often. The center of the city was already in the Russian hands, which for us meant freedom. But around the periphery was all around the Nazi army, hitting, shelling into the center, never knowing where it would hit next. But life began again. And how life began from the total bomb dust situation in the very end of 44 and then moving on toward the middle of 45, how the city came back to life day after day by day, you could say, more signs coming, more people starting up businesses, healing themselves, healing the environment, building back the buildings, the infrastructure, and enjoying themselves in the process. To me, walking in the city and coming back and reporting to my parents, such and such store just opened. And I talked to the owners and they're coming back and they're starting, and others are starting with them. What is happening every day? Resurgence, a renaissance, a rebirth. And I witnessed it. After 2 years, unfortunately, it was dominated by the Russian communist regime. But for the first 2 years, that was this rebirth, which was a unique experience. And it's something that stayed with me. This can be the case when we have a situation where we can move toward a positive rebirth at a higher level, not the same as before, but in a higher level, a higher coherence, a higher level of love and understanding. How we can do that, what I call the upshift, is still the impetus, the recognition, the remembrance of those 2 years in Budapest, in 45 to 47.
Yeah, now I can see the connection with the upshift. I mean, yes, because this is what the upshift is about, that everything may look as though it's becoming an existential crisis right now, but in fact it is an opportunity too.
And it is happening. I think there is more and more conversations like this, for example, with this topic, would have been very unusual, I think, even a couple of years ago. What do you think so?
Yes, yeah.
So it's becoming more general. Not all this quality as wide by your show is, but there's more and more on the internet. There's more and more people are talking about it. There was even just half a year ago, during the COVID crisis, people were talking about something like this. They say, you are dreaming, the reality is much worse. We just have to survive. Now something has started, something pulling out of something and pulling into something else, something better. As long as what we pull into is part of the universe, part of Gaia, part of life on Earth. As long as we can do that, then we'll move toward the next level of our existence on this planet. The opportunity given to us of not having to stay the way we were, because we cannot stay the way we were. It's not sustainable. It doesn't work either in the climate-wise or the human refugee-wise or economy and money-wise. Nothing works finance-wise the way it was. We have to innovate. We have to move forward. And as we can do so, and we are pushed to do so, is a tremendous chance that we have in this day and age. And as I mentioned, I'm thankful to the universe for being able to live through the last years of my life. I'm past 90 now, on this period of a coming upshift that I hope to contribute to the best of my ability.
So tell us about the upshift movement and how we too can start putting our energy into, creating the world that we want to see.
We're not going to tell anybody what to do. It comes from people themselves. All we are saying is join together in the good faith that you have the power to create a better world, to pull out of this, and then do what comes to you, but join together. Other people have this dawning expectations, this dawning confidence that we are at the edge of a better world.
Yes.
Just because we have been pushed out, rather rudely pushed out, I should say, from from the previous system. We can't maintain the economic, social, political, financial system, not to mention the ecological system, the way it was. It's just not sustainable. So we are being awakened to that. The climate crisis that we witness is just one reminder, a very strong reminder. And if you don't watch out, it will be not just an initial kick, as the cyberneticians call, but it will be a very rude foot kick, kicking us all. Because when you don't manage the environment in the matter of a few years, it's going to create problems for a significant portion of humanity, problems of survival, actually. And then the strains that will set for the whole system will be unprecedented. But that's the negative. That's the downshift side. The upshift side is that this opportunity to draw on our inner force, drawn on the holotropic attractor. That's the word. I invented, if you like, but already as holotropism has been used. A holistic tropism. Tropism is an attraction, is a sense, is a love for something. A holistic one, the whole system. How this attractor, which makes us part of Gaia and keeps us a part of Gaia, how this could be consciously directed, made conscious, oriented, so that we become a conscious part of the system of life on the planet. Nothing bigger, nothing more universal or cosmic could be imagined. I've just written a little preface, a short preface, to my newest book, which is going to be published in April. It's called The Survival Imperative. And here in this preface, I say this: maintaining life, high forms of life and consciousness on Earth is not just a human imperative. It's a cosmic mission. Because surely not everywhere in the universe is there higher forms of life. There are many places, perhaps millions and billions of places. But this higher form of life that we have on Earth is surely to some extent a gem, a jewel, and maintaining it and further developing is part of the evolutionary power, the evolutionary progression, the upshift, which is evolution from the chaos of the Big Bang to a coherent, increasingly organized universe where life can appear and mind and consciousness. We are part of that. And our mission is to be a conscious part. Use those decades that we are given on Earth in such a way that we could say we have done our best to create higher levels of consciousness on this planet so that we can start moving forward toward that oneness and toward that universal love, which is surely the ground plan of the big process that we call cosmic evolution.
Very well said, very well said. 106 books. I'm assuming that the new one is the 107th.
I think it may be, yes. Yes.
And are you going to stop now, or are they going to keep coming forth?
I have no plans, actually, to do another 108. This one is actually a development of the previous book. We talked about the upshift, which is the path to healing and evolution on the planet. This is how evolution can be made conscious. It has to be made conscious. How this is a survival condition, survival precondition. So I'm really spelling out what I put forward in the previous book. So I think if people are well advised to go for the basic ideas, yes, to the Upshift, which is published, which is available on the internet. But don't stop there. Go to the survival imperative, which is creating conscious evolution on the planet. Yeah. That is where my latest thinking is registered, and I'm open to dialoguing on that. I'm open to developing it as a joint enterprise. The concrete payoff for that is what I name, sort of semi-joking, tongue-in-speak, the WOM, the World Upshift Movement. There's a World Upshift organization already registered in England. There's a World Upshift organization likewise registered. And the World Upshift Movement is on the internet and people can join. So it's something that we have started. February 21, we are going to have a formal event at the House of Lords because one of our members is a Lord Stone, who has invited us to have this meeting in London. February 21, formally, we are going to launch the Upshift movement. But it's not a movement of the organization, of the foundation. It's a movement of people. People who join together. One can join the World Upshift movement. It doesn't cost anything. There's no money involved. It's only goodwill, faith, and willingness to love and to work together. That's all that's involved. That's a lot, of course. So that is my child. That is my offspring, the Upshift movement. And I'm willing to provide the basis, trying to provide an acceptable, scientifically founded basis for that movement, so that people enter on it, know that they're entering on something that is realistic, that is not just an intuitive fantasy. It is deep spiritual basis, yes, but with roots in the reality of the universe.
And the Upshift, the book, this month is my bookworm on the No BS Spiritual Book Club, and it will remain so for a few months. And if people want to go over to the No BS Spiritual Book Club, you can download an excerpt and you can download information about the Upshift movement over there. Ervin Laszlo, thank you so much for adding your 10 best list to the No BS Spiritual Book Club's library of recommendations. It's a really valuable contribution.
Well, that's a wonderful idea, to get people to get quotes with their own 10 favorite books. I try to do that. It's an intuitive selection. It's what did something for me, which seemed to be lasting, which is lasting. And I hope that it will help others also to find their spiritual home on this planet.
Well said again. Thank you so much for joining us. And please go and check out the Upshift, read about it, and then buy the book, because it is critical, absolutely critical. So that's it for this week. If you want to know more about Ervin Laszlo, his work, his books, and especially the Upshift movement, you can go to 3 websites, the LaszloInstitute.com, upshiftmovement.com, and ervinlaszlobooks.com. That's it for this week. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and I'll be back at the same time next week with another 10 best interview for the No BS Spiritual Book Club. Till then, it's goodbye from me and a big thank you to Ervin Laszlo.